So hi and welcome everyone. Welcome to the Humanimal Talks podcast. This is actually our first version of the podcast in English. And the reason for that is that we're very happy to have a special guest here. So I'm Manuel and my colleague Patrick is with me and he will introduce our surprise guest.
Yeah, I'm really happy that we have a guest here, and I'm really happy that it's such a great human being. I'm very proud to present Anders Olsson. Anders Olsson is the founder of Conscious Breathing Institute and one of the leading experts in breathwork and the whole theme of CO2. So, and by the way, he's a really nice and really humble and great human being. So I'm really happy that you're here. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a few sentences about yourself? Just how do you became in contact with breathing and CO2?
Well, I read a book about how to get rid of your asthma for life by changing your breathing habits, basically. It was based on the Buteyko method. I didn't have problems with asthma, but it helped me change my life because I often had problems to wind down and unlock my turbo and take it easy and realize that life was more than just performing and achieving things and getting better, stronger, faster, or whatever. I still like my turbo very much, but it's kind of nice to sometimes being able to to take it a little easier. So when I started to apply that knowledge and those tools, it really almost immediately helped me to calm down my racing mind, to be more present in the here and now. And then when I introduced it to people around me and they also started to notice effect with their different challenges, then I was hooked. And that is now 15 years ago, and it didn't take long before I formed the conscious breathing concept. And I'm the typical nerdy person, so I started reading tons of books and research studies and not least experimenting with my own body. And I'm still as fired up about this very interesting subject of breathing, what it can do for us, the power in our breath, seeing it as a tool, a way to tap into our nervous system and change it.
Very interesting. And I'm now in your education right now to become a conscious breathing instructor, almost 80% through the education, I think. Yeah, it takes some time, but it's really interesting, and I learned a lot about the power of CO2, and I think this could be like the main theme for this podcast episode. When I watch, I'm a huge football fan, not the European football, the American football fan. And when I watch American football, all the athletes after when they're out of the game, all of them just breathing oxygen, and everybody talks about oxygen. You need more oxygen. But why is CO2 maybe even more important, or what's the role of CO2 in our body?
Yeah, CO2 is usually very misunderstood. If we know about it, well, we know it's the main greenhouse gas that will get us all killed because of the climate change, or it's simple waste product that we just should get out of our body as soon as possible. But when it comes to our body, it's actually a lot more than just a waste product. It actually helps to facilitate the oxygenation of our body. So if we look at the oxygenation from the air in the atmosphere all the way to the mitochondria, we can see that the CO2 is involved in every single step. So first, we need to take in the oxygen, right? We need to inhale, and that is controlled by carbon dioxide. It is not the lack of oxygen that makes us take the next breath. It is the build up, the production of carbon dioxide that happens all the time in our body as a part of the metabolism. When oxygen and nutrients is converted to energy in our mitochondria, also heat and water and carbon dioxide is produced, and the excess carbon dioxide is exhaled. And it's the buildup of carbon dioxide that stimulates the breathing center in our brainstem to make us take the next breath. So first step is to inhale, and that is controlled by carbon dioxide. Then the next step is to get the air, the oxygen we inhale from the nose and mouth down into the airways and lungs. And there, carbon dioxide is crucial in ensuring that the airways keeps open. And then when the oxygen is transferred from the lungs to the blood, the same goes there, that carbon dioxide is crucial in ensuring that the blood vessels stays open. And the step 4 would be then when the blood reaches, for example, if I'm moving my arm muscle, it's working out, it needs more oxygen. Carbon dioxide is very important then in helping to get the hemoglobin to offload the carbon dioxide from the blood so that the oxygen can enter into the cells and mitochondria and be of use. So we talked about 4 steps, and the final 5th step where carbon dioxide is involved is in the actual mitochondria, where oxygen is extremely reactive. That's why it is so important for us, because we use that characteristics of oxygen to produce energy efficiently in the mitochondria. But the problem is, if there is too much oxygen, if this process in the mitochondria goes out of hand, so we can liken the mitochondria, where we produce almost all our energy. They're called the powerhouses of our cells. We can liken them to a furnace, like a fire. And if you have a fire and you put oxygen on that fire, it will just explode like that. So these mitochondria that we have millions of, billions of in our body, they are like small fires. So we need to control the oxygen, that process when we produce energy. And carbon dioxide is the substance that helps control that. So if oxygen is the, in a nuclear power plant, if oxygen is the nuclear reaction, carbon dioxide would be the control rods, making sure that the nuclear reaction doesn't go out of hand.
Thank you for the explanation. It was really structured and really clear for me. In your education, you talk about overbreathing. So that you have that overbreathing leads to too much oxygen in your body and to less CO2 in your body. Can you explain us how that works and what's the downside of overbreathing? Normally, I would say, okay, more oxygen, more power, but yeah, it's the other way around, right?
Yes, it's the other way around, but we've been taught that carbon dioxide is the enemy and oxygen is the good guy. More oxygen, the better. So why don't we just take big breaths? Come on, bring in more oxygen. But actually what we tend to forget is that oxygen is actually also toxic when we get too much of it. If we take a bite in an apple and we put it down, it will start to turn brown, and that's because it's exposed to oxygen. That's why we protect food in general from oxygen by putting plastic around it, for example, or the fruit, the banana, or the apple, they have peel to protect themselves from the oxidative stress, which is what happens. So the biological process that happens in the apple that turns brown when we take a bite in it and put it down and let it get exposed to oxygen, that happens in our body as well. And we call that oxidative stress. The majority of these free oxygen radicals, they are formed in the mitochondria. So if we flood our system with too much oxygen, there is a high risk for oxidative stress and more inflammations. And across the line, if you look at different diseases and symptoms, we have a tendency to have inflammations. And also when we train and exercise and we get aches and pains the next day, that could also be because of inflammations. And one of the main feedback we get when people start to apply nasal breathing during physical activity is that they have less sore muscles the day after. One hypothesis we have is that it's actually because of the restriction of oxygen intake, which means that you reduce the levels of inflammation. You basically, like a car, if the car is very efficient, it will have long gas mileage. You fill up the car and the car can drive for long. So that is one aspect. And the other aspect is that the the smoke, the exhaust coming out from the car is very little, is very clean. So the same with the energy production in our body. If we give the mitochondria the right amount of oxygen, there will be less waste products. There will be less of these free radicals. The energy production will be very clean. So that is one aspect of overbreathing, that we take in too much oxygen. And when we think that maybe oxygen is the good guy, it's good to bring in more, we should consider, why does it work to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation when someone has had an accident, for example? It is because we exhale 75% of the oxygen we just inhaled. Our out-breath contains 16% oxygen, while our in-breath contains 21% oxygen. So already there we can see that we have more than enough oxygen in our body. We don't need to take in more. Does it make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we switch one poison for the other, so to speak. So we make one poison like stand out as a bigger poison than the other, while it seems to be a balancing effect that we need to be more aware of.
Yeah, that's the key. That's like with everything. Water is good. If we don't drink any water in a week, it's a huge stress for the body. But if we drink 10 liters in a day, it's a huge, from another perspective. So it's always about balance. And the water intake is dependent whether I live in the desert or I live here in Sweden, or if I'm running a marathon, or if I'm sitting in the sofa, or if I'm eating a lot of vegetables, or if I'm just eating junk food containing very little water. So it's always about balance, and our food intake, our water intake, our breathing should always try to mimic our body's needs, right? Our metabolic requirements. So that's the aspect of oxygen, and the aspect of carbon dioxide is that we discussed earlier how it helps keeping the airways and blood vessels open. So basically, when you overbreathe, you will induce friction in your body, in your system. Friction resistance, which will make it harder for the air to flow, harder for the blood to flow. So that means you will have to fight a little harder. More of your resources will be used to stay alive, and because it's not very efficient. So there will be less resources to do the things we want to do.
I'm curious, what would you say is the root for all this? So how is it? It seems to be something that's so natural, but still it's out of balance. So where would you look for the root cause of this kind of like evil imbalance, so to speak?
I think there are many causes. One isn't that the modern society, we live very far from nature, where we have spent the majority of the evolution of the human race. We have created a society that is not really in line with where most of our development took place. One aspect is our nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, where we have the flight system, and we have the rest and digest and safe and secure system. And there should also be a balance between the two. And during evolution, it has been very clear, I think, there is a tiger and we enter into fight-flight. I need to run for my life. And then it's clearly when the tiger shows up, it's clear when the tiger is gone. Nowadays we have an action movie, or we have an angry email, or we watch the news, but we're just sitting still in the office chair or in the sofa, and our fight-flight system is triggered by these things. But unlike what we did during evolution, the dangers were followed by physical activity. Nowadays, a lot of the stress we encounter is not followed by physical activity. So the stress response needs to be upgraded to the modern society, I think. We need to understand that one of the things we can do to upgrade that stress response is to focus on our breathing, because when we enter into a state of stress and fight-flight, our breathing will mimic that state. But if I'm sitting on the office chair, there is no point breathing more forceful because I'm not moving my body. So if I become aware of that and start to control my breathing, realizing that it's no point breathing fast, shallow, holding my breath, breathing chaotically, and instead closing my mouth, trying to breathe low, using my diaphragm, and slow and rhythmically, I'm able to withstand that stress a lot easier. The stress coming my way, that email, that phone call, that action movie, the news or whatever, it doesn't get to me in the same way when I turn to my breathing and keep it relaxed.
It's really interesting because I tell my patients exactly the same story about how we used to use physical activity to get over stress, and now we're just sitting on our laptops and doing nothing. So one of my things I tell my patients is, if you're under stress at your work, stand up, move for 1 minute really fast, just move like a mini HIIT workout, so that we use that extra energy we produce while we are in stress, and then afterwards the breath becomes calmer and more relaxed. And yeah, I tell my patients exactly the same stories.
Yeah, and what you just told, I think that's really perfect to do. We need to release that somehow, and a lot of people can testify to that. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm upset. Well, just go out for a walk or a jog, and then after some time you feel fine again.
Yeah, I call that sitting breaks. Just 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, all out, and then back to work. And it works so incredibly, really. I mean, I tell my patients all the time, if all my patients would do that, I would have no patients.
You would be out of work,
Yeah.
I want to add a follow-up to you brought up the keyword consciousness, and I'm quite curious because it seems to be a thing in different areas of life, that the capacity to bring consciousness into certain areas of life is something that's almost like a key factor in modern life to manage properly, to find back to balance, right? Where something was in balance maybe 10,000 years ago because the stress response was movement, and the stress response was always like a physical response. And now, as you said, like the saber-toothed tiger is sitting in front of you in form of like an email, not moving towards you, and you don't have to move away. And so you bring in consciousness to, how would you describe like first observe your breathing, bring attention to your breathing. It seems to be for many clients also, they're struggling with that step to bring consciousness towards something that seems to be, like not pragmatic, so to say. So it's always like the conflict that people have is, why would I have to be so aware or attentive to something that is coming so natural? So how would you, or what are your thoughts towards that?
Yeah, I mean, to get something, we have to give something, right? If I'm not prepared to do any work, then probably I will not be able to reap the benefits. So I think that's a reason why the level of consumption of alcohol and candy and snacks and medications is so big, because most of us, we are looking for the quick fix. We are not prepared to do the job. But what I found with breathing is that you can get quite a big effect with quite a little effort, which is then appealing to a lot of people. I think all of us, even though we're into we want to do the work, we are prepared to do it, still we are looking for the quick fixes. We want to get a lot of money back from invested the money, with the time we invest. But when you start off talking about consciousness, I think that carbon dioxide is a driver of consciousness. Low levels of carbon dioxide means low consciousness, and that goes hand in hand with the constriction of the blood vessels, which will then lead to impaired blood flow and oxygenation of the brain. So the brain will automatically be more stressed, and when we are stressed, we have more of the tunnel vision. We are focused on the here and now. think short term. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I have low energy, and we reach for the chocolate bar or the whatever it is. I'm angry or I'm upset, and we reach for the alcohol or the next cigarette. But as soon as we're able to calm down the system, which coincides with increasing the levels of CO2, right? Increasing the tolerance for CO2, we are able to move out of the fight-flight, move out of the tunnel vision to get a more broader perspective. It's like we're taking a step back. We're going from fast speed to slower speed, and then we are able to make more conscious decisions. So one of the things we notice is that people get slightly kinder, slightly smarter. They're making slightly wiser decisions in their life when they are able to zoom out, including definitely myself. When I came from that more constant fight-flight state, I was able to calm down more and zoom out more. I was able to become more aware of my own patterns, thought patterns, emotional patterns, and different patterns throughout the day. Some of them luckily took me in the direction where I wanted to go, but a lot of them did not. They took me in the opposite direction. And then if we are not so conscious, if we just have the tunnel vision, we just think life is unfair. We want to go to the right, but we end up to the left all the time, and we blame things on the outside. But it's actually we are co-creators of that reality. So if we are able to slow down and open up the blood vessels to our brains, we can become a little smarter. Over time we will start to make slightly wiser decisions, and it doesn't take much. One of my favorite examples is if you look at the three best male tennis players of all times, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer. All of them have one thing in common. They have won 55% of their rallies, their ball duels, and they have lost 45%. Meaning the difference between winning and losing is very, very small. So sometimes we may think that I'm down here at the bottom and the guys up there, they are just magical. They are from another planet. They do things I could never dream of. But actually the difference is very, very small. So if we can just think that we make, 35 to 50,000 decisions in one day, if we can just make a few of them slightly better, over time that will have a huge effect, like the butterfly.
Yeah, there was a great interview. They interviewed Novak Djokovic. I think you sent it to me.
Yeah.
And they asked him, what's the difference between a good athlete and a great athlete? And he just said, one conscious breath.
Exactly. Yeah, he said, I don't expect to be able to be focused and present in the here and now all the time. Sometimes my mind wanders. I think about the ball I just lost. I'm afraid, am I going to win this match or not? But the way he said, it's not that I have to be there all the time, but I have to be really good at, once I've been defeated, once I've lost the ball, once the negative thoughts take over, I have to be really good to get back on track, to get present. And conscious breathing, he said, is the simplest, the best tool, the most effective tool for me to do that. And in the essence, it's really a form of CO2 therapy to do that. What we tend to say on our lectures, if you forget everything else, remember this, close your mouth and prolong your exhale. And when you do that, you slow down your breathing. So you restrict slightly the intake of oxygen and you retain slightly more carbon dioxide. And that's how you shift the balance. Plus, when you focus on your breath, you give your brain a task. So the negative thoughts, they really don't... Our brain is really limited. If we tell it, count from 1 to 100 or count from 100 to 0 in decrements of 7, the brain will be fully busy, so we can't think of these negative things. So focus on our breath is a great way to trick our brain, actually.
Yeah, wow, there's so much in there. When I hear you speak, like all these connections come up. I love how you paint the picture of the one begetting the other. So you focus on you focus on the breathing, which changes the balance between CO2 and oxygen, but also changing the balance between CO2 and oxygen changes your level of consciousness, your level of stress or not stress, the way you see the world, so to speak. No, and it reminds me a lot of in flow research, they talk about the quickest access to flow is breathing. And in many old traditions, they start with breathing, right? But also what I like you painting there is it seems to be a thin line between wanting too much control over breathing, no, and being patient enough to like diving into breathing, so to speak. So I wonder, how would you help people, or like what would be your advice? I mean, you said it with that already in a way, with bringing attention to the exhale. Is that the golden nugget that you would bring in to say to not lose balance between being too rigid about wanting to learn to breathe properly, and on the other hand still wanting to do something productive?
Yeah, I think the key for me, which took me a while to find out, the key is relaxation. When I started with breathing, it was more like the achievement attitude. Okay, I want to have the world's best breathing in the shortest period of time, and just focus, thought of it as a competition, until I realized, no, that's not the way the breathing works. It's about letting go, accepting, relaxing. So when we inhale, that is activation. Exhale is relaxation. So in the exhale, that is where we find the increased ability to letting go. So yeah, it's very simple. I had a fantastic talk the other day with a guy from Germany who is a paramedic. So he is there in the ambulance all day meeting patients, and he said he embarked on this breathing journey only a couple of months ago, and he said, in 8 weeks now since I learned conscious breathing, and I noticed all the benefits on myself. He does long distance cycling as well, and really noticed a lot of benefits. He started using the carbohaler, where you inhale extra carbon dioxide. He started using taped mouth at night. He started using the relaxator, which activates the diaphragm. It gives you a resistance on the out-breath to help maintain a low, slow, rhythmic breathing. So he was hooked. He noticed big differences with himself. So he decided to see if it could have an effect on his patients. So he said, when we talked, in the last 8 weeks, I've had 150 patients with a heart attack or a suspected heart attack. That's a large number, 150 in 8 weeks. But anyway, that's his reality. That's what he's dealing with from day to day. And he said that he helped them to prolong their exhale. That was what he did. That was the level of instruction they could take. Very simple. Some of them could close their mouth and do the longer exhale through their nose. Some of them, they had to use their mouth. Some of them, he had to guide them to breathe with them. Okay, let's do this together now, this breathing. We aim at taking longer exhales. And what he said is that normally all patients that are in such a stress as a heart attack, they get very happy when the ambulance comes, and then they get disappointed because they realize, oh, he's just another guy. He's not even a doctor. He's just there to take me from point A to point B, from where we are now to the hospital. And so they get disappointed, and they were super stressed before because they're in a state of this heart attack state, which is very stressful, I can just imagine. And then they get even more stressed, and normally what happens is they turn on the sirens and the lights in the ambulance, which actually creates a very loud noise inside the ambulance. So almost in all cases, the patients that leaves the ambulance when they arrive at the hospital with a heart attack or a suspected heart attack, they are in a worse condition than when they enter the ambulance. So if we just let that sink in and realize how much suffering that caused. So this is where it becomes interesting. When he sat there and was breathing with these 150 people, and he recorded everything. Everything is documented, the vital signs, the blood pressure, the temperature, the pulse, etc. All of them, not a single failure. All 150 were in better condition when they arrived in the hospital than when they came into the ambulance. Yeah, so that tells us a lot about the power of just lengthening the exhale. We don't have necessarily to complicate things. I'm not saying that it's bad to do box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing or coherent breathing or all kinds of different breathing exercises. I just think that this is very simple, and it's very simple to explain. Inhale, activation. If you check your pulse, you will notice the pulse goes up on the inhale. Muscles are active to open up the rib cage to let the air in, while exhale is the complete opposite. The pulse will go down. The muscles at a normal exhale, they just go back to their resting position, and it moves you more into the state of parasympathetic.
It's amazing. It almost sounds like too good to be true, right?
It does.
Being so easy, but it's that riding the wave of exhalation is how one of my teachers says it, right? So you ride the wave of exhalation.
I saw a TED talk with Dr. Emma Seppeler. She is a Stanford researcher, and she has worked with war veterans, and she says that they try all kinds of pharmaceutical drugs and interventions, and they just don't work. And some don't work because they don't like them. They are not able to do them because they're in a constant state of fight-flight since they have PTSD. And other interventions have little, according to her, little effect as well. But breathing works, she says. And the easiest way to calm the nervous system in these guys is to lengthen the exhale.
It reminds me of my own experiences from like, I'm not a surfer, I'm Austrian, so I'm not living at the sea. But having a couple of experiences with surfing basically means in Indonesia, I spend a lot of time underwater instead of on the board. And I remember when I was starting to go for bigger waves and being like washed properly, then somehow I started, to just count the seconds until I'm surfacing again, and therefore taking more time to, relax and breathe out. And I remember that I once hit that point where I realized I just let go and basically give in. And eventually I will come up and just count the seconds until I do. And that's so embodied in myself that I feel like I can go back there, and it helps me calm again, even though I'm thinking of myself being underwater, right?
Yeah, and that is carbon dioxide and oxygen again, right? Oxygen is activating. Oxygen is what we take in when we inhale. Carbon dioxide is tied to exhalation. And when we reduce our breathing, we will restore the balance. We will slightly reduce the oxygen and slightly increase the carbon dioxide.
That's a really interesting point, because, if you have too much CO2 in your body, you start to panic, right? If it's like, if you're holding your breath for too long, if you have underwater,
yeah.
At some point you will start to panic.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that when you have too little CO2 in your body, the oldest trick in the books is, if you have a panic attack, then breathe into a bag, right? Yeah. It's the oldest thing you did. All the paramedics did. So it's really interesting how CO2 works as kind of an agent for panic and against it. So you can use it to relax yourself, although it can introduce panic as well. So
yeah,
it's the balance again.
It is the balance again. So yeah, low levels of CO2 give rise to a panic attack, and you get a bag to breathe in and out through to increase the levels of CO2, because you will rebreathe some of the CO2 you just exhaled, right? So it means quickly you will increase the CO2 in your body, and your brain will be able to calm down when you restore the blood flow to the brain. But also, as you said, if you hold your breath, that's the other side of the story, where you increase the levels of CO2 to the point where you also could get into a state of panic. So it's about balance, yeah. Too little is not good, too much is not good. But then, so what CO2 therapy is about is to help you to tolerate higher levels of CO2, because since CO2 controls breathing, that means if I'm breathing very fast, if I'm taking 20, 25, 30 breaths a minute, it means that I have very low tolerance for carbon dioxide. So as I'm learning to tolerate higher and higher and higher levels, that will be translated to a lower breathing frequency, which is the hallmark of relaxation. And one thing I did in the early days when I have just started with this breathing journey, and I have already started with nasal breathing while running and doing other types of exercise. So I decided to also reduce my breathing as much as possible while running. So I did nasal breathing, but then I also reduced the breathing frequency. So I had 2 or 3 steps on the inhale, 6, 7, 8 steps on the exhale. And I did it for 1 hour, and it was really tough. Almost every breath, every step, I felt like breathless, out of breath. I want to take a big breath, because I was really increasing the levels of CO2 in my body by doing the run, which increases the metabolism and the production of CO2, and by preventing the outflow as much as possible. So I was just about what you described when you hold your breath, Patrick, and you're about to enter into a state of panic. I was not there in the panic, but it was close to that. But I managed to do it the whole hour, but the reward came when I came home. I sat down at the kitchen table, and 3 hours later, I was still sitting there, just like in a complete state of bliss. It was just amazing. I'd never ever experienced anything like it before. It was more like, okay, where are the angels? Kind of really felt one with the universe and with everything. Really cool experience, and I attribute that to the big CO2 exposure. Yeah.
We did something similar actually. In our last seminar, we had a heat session where we moved in a really hot room. And we were 12 people or so in a not really big room, so the CO2 levels were pretty high at the end.
Yes.
And we moved pretty intensely, so it was an intense movement session. And a few of us taped their mouth during the session, and afterwards I felt so incredibly energized. I mean, it was really tough. It was 1 hour, really tough exercises, but afterwards I felt so amazing. And I did that a couple of times before moving in a hot room, but this time was the first time when I taped my mouth. So it was only nasal breathing. I realized it was how can I say, it was easier for me to not push through it. That's not the right way, but I don't have to push through it, because I had so much more energy, and afterwards I felt so calm, so full of energy. It was just amazing.
Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So you also had a nice carbon dioxide experience, yeah?
Yeah. I had a couple of them,
Oh, yeah.
but this one was special, because in our seminars we play with this difference between too much and too little CO2 actually. So on our heat days we have we fill our body up with CO2, and on our cold days we try things like Wim Hof breathing, where you breathe out all the CO2 actually, and we do like one cold, one hot, one cold, one hot a day one after the other. So we get like the body has to adapt all the time. So it's like hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, much CO2, low CO2 levels. Then we adjust the food as well. So it's like you get like salads, cucumbers and stuff like that on cold days, and you get like chili, turmeric and stuff like that on the heat days. So we just try to get the body to adapt to all that's different stressors we throw at the body.
So when Patrick talks about the seminars, also I think both of you have once talked about it. I wonder what are your thoughts on it. So when I'm quite a curious kind of person, so when I heard of this story of so it was Apache Scout kind of initiation that I just read or heard about. I'm not sure. I don't remember fully, but I heard this story where they would, like take water in the mouth, climb the mountain, descend the mountain, and spit it out again. And so I would start with that, and I started also to introduce it to, like different situations with other people. And then when Patrick came in with like his knowledge and his background, then it started to make a lot of sense. But I would like to hear your perspective on this go. What are your thoughts on the idea of putting water in your mouth and then going for a jog or going for a hike and keeping the water in the mouth?
Yeah, so the legend says that Genghis Khan did that, and that was how he started already as a young kid, and that's how he built his big strength and was able to create the world's largest country. I think. Yeah, exactly. North American Indians, I'm not sure if they used water, but there are stories how they were superior in nasal breathing and in their endurance. I think it's just a cool thing to do, to see who can do whatever activity you engage in and at the same time keep the water in your mouth.
Yeah, it's quite challenging on so many levels. Now you're putting attention to what's in your mouth, and you can't really focus on anything else, but still you feel like you would choke if you do. So it's quite an interesting experiment that might be. Yeah.
It is, yeah, and it brings a lot of attention to your breathing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Which is another aspect, because awareness is usually the first step if we want to create a change. So when I tell people, try to become aware of your daily breathing habits, pay attention to your. Is your mouth open? Are you holding your breath? Are you breathing fast and shallow? Are you not breathing at all? And see if there is a relationship between the perceived stress or anger or fear, etc. And some people are willing to do that. Some are not. But if they do, I think that is the starting point. The awareness part. It's hugely important, I think. If we want to make change in anything, not only breathing, of course.
Yeah. It's like you paint this picture of this curious attention that is like the driver for everything, right? So more than wanting anything, changing anything for good, it's like sounds like, and I mean, people who listen to this podcast can't see your eyes when you talk about breathing, but it's almost like you're glowing when you talk about it. So it's easy.
But that's the thing. That's the thing, right? With us adults, we are so afraid of making mistakes, so we live from fear. But if you look at the child, they just give it a go. They see what happens. They're operating on a completely different level. So if we adults can tap into that curious attitude just a little bit more and reduce a little of that fear, I think our lives will be so much better.
I'm so glad you're bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the topic of our last podcast.
We just had
it was
podcast
like,
on.
Yeah, we talked about that for an hour. Yeah, playfulness.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Now, it's such an interesting mix because it seems to be like the tendency of I don't know, like Western or Central European adults, that we see this idea of optimizing or this potential that is out there and that we haven't grasped yet. And so we start to do it in a very adult way, right? We face it in a very structured and constructive and most efficient way possible, but then we lose that part that makes the inspiration in the inspiration, right?
Yes.
We talked a lot about nasal breathing now. So you brought it up a couple of times. Can you summarize it? Why is nasal breathing so important, and why is it much more beneficial for your health than mouth breathing?
Yes. So recently I've digged into more about the sense of smell, and one TED talk I saw said that the nose, well, which I have confirmed by reading studies, so the nose is the first developed of our senses. Already, I think at week 10 in the mother's womb, it's fully developed. So already there, the child, the fetus starts to develop preferences based on what the mother is eating. And when the child is born, the predominant sense is the smell. And in that TED talk, the woman said up to 10 years of age, the predominant sense is the smell. I haven't been able to confirm, but if that is true, all children, they are like dogs then, right? Perceiving the word with their noses, which is amazing. And the thing is that the nose, it's the first developed of our senses during evolution, earlier than the other senses, the eyes and the ears and the touch. And it makes sense that these small organisms that we come from were able to smell. Is that good food or is it bad food? If it's good, I want to move towards it. If it's bad, I want to move away from it. So anyway, the smell is also in direct contact, or I should say the nose is in direct contact with our limbic system, our center for emotions. So we are really, as many can testify to, we are emotional beings. We make our decisions very often based on emotions, not based on logic. So that means that the nose is crucial for our decision making. So I remember my son said when he had COVID and he lost his sense of smell for several weeks, and he said it was almost like he didn't want to live. It felt pointless, meaningless. He was shocked how his sense of smell could affect him so much, but that's how important it is.
The smell of childhood memories, huh?
Yeah, and studies even show that we can smell fear and anger. We choose our partner based on smell. And so that is one aspect of why the nose is so important. The other aspect is that it warms and humidifies the air, so it prepares the air for the lungs. It filters out bacteria and virus and other fungi and microbes. And researchers tell us that we inhale up towards 100 billion particles in a single day. So if we just compare that, taking that in via the mouth, dry, cold air full of bacteria, virus and other particles through the mouth, unfiltered, entering into the airways and lungs, of course they will be irritated, and when there is an irritation there will be an inflammation, and then there will be a swelling. And when we have swollen airways, it will be harder for the air to move in and out of the lungs. So automatically mouth breathing will force the air higher up in the chest. And we have to compensate because it's very inefficient to breathe up here in the chest. So we breathe faster, which is the hallmark for stress. Fast and shallow breathing. Big breath is another hallmark. Holding our breath is another hallmark of stress. So what the nose does is the opposite. It prepares the air for the lungs, and actually the airstream created in the in the nose is more laminar. The airstream created in the mouth is more chaotic, so the airflow cancel each other out, also leading to high chest breathing. So the nose, since it has warmed and humidified the air and cleaned it of a lot of the particles, it drives the air further down into the lungs, which is a lot more efficient because in the bottom part of the lungs we have most of the alveoli, the lung sacs where the oxygen is transferred to the blood. So again, breathing higher up in the chest is very inefficient. That's why we need to compensate by breathing faster, because we don't have as much alveoli here, and there is 10 times more blood flowing in the lower part of the lungs compared to the upper. So nose is crucial for efficient oxygenation. I would say it's the most underestimated organ we have. Mouth is for eating and talking, nose is for breathing. And there is another function of the nose. It's to produce nitric oxide, which is a gas that has shown to be antiviral and antifungal. So it kills bacteria and virus and fungi.
And it widens your blood vessels. So
yes, yeah. It does. Yeah. So when you inhale through the nose, the air is spiked with this substance, nitric oxide. When you take it in through the mouth, it is not.
I realized when I start taping my mouth at night. I mean, now it's for me it's like brushing my teeth. It's like yeah, I do it every night. The first few times I tried it, I was like, yeah, okay, it really does nothing for me. But now I'm almost hooked. I do it every night, and I feel like I don't track my sleep, but I feel that my sleep is way better. And I used to have really problems with sleeping, but now it's really good. And tipping my mouth at night, so I have to force myself to breathe through the nose, and I feel I'm like the next day I'm calmer and I'm more relaxed, actually.
And it's fun for the kids to look at.
Yeah, and also like when I started your education, I started to be more conscious about how I breathe during exercise. I used to be like like this, breathing through the mouth really hard, because otherwise it's not hard enough, right? Yeah. And now I put my consciousness on, okay, close your damn mouth, breathe through your nose. There's enough oxygen coming into your body, and I'm really amazed at how much more work output I have. And as you said at the beginning, I'm not sore afterwards. I feel like, okay, I can go again. And I realized that I did a triathlon a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not a bad swimmer, but I have no breathing technique at all during swimming. And I realized after the swimming, my breathing was completely off. I was like breathing really fast through the mouth, and it took me maybe the first 5 kilometers on the bicycle to calm myself, to get a lower pulse, and to get myself back to normal nasal breathing. And do you have maybe a tip for if it happens to athletes, if they fell into that trap that they have to breathe through their mouth really heavy? Do you have a tip how they can go back to nasal breathing as fast as possible?
Yes, so in that case, I would advise to lengthen the exhale slightly through the mouth. So take it step by step. Lengthen the exhale through the mouth, and then see if they can do inhale through the nose and out through the mouth. And then the next step would be inhale and exhale through the nose. So when I have done, for example, I notice very well when I do more high intense training, the exhale will get shorter, and then the inhale will get shorter, and then as I increase the intensity, the exhale will get even more shorter. So the more stressed my body is, the shorter the exhale. So that is what is a reflection of the stress, I would say, the exhale. So in order to counter that, to change that, to reduce the stress, that would then be to increase the exhale slightly. So that would be just to count. Okay, 1, 2, 3 on the inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the exhale, for example. Or maybe you do 1 on the inhale and 2 on the exhale, really depending on the activity and your fitness level and your stress level.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll do another triathlon this Sunday, so I will definitely try it.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And when it comes to swimming, I grew up by the sea, and I've always wanted to be able to crawl, but I wasn't good at it. I could just crawl for 20 meters, and then when my son started swimming, I joined him, and I was able to increase that to 50 meters. But that was it before I was gasping for air, and I realized that the key for me was to find the right breathing cycle. When I found that, which was for me 1, 2, 3 crawl strokes before breathing, that was the right for me. And when I found that rhythm, I was able to go from 50 meters to 200 meters, and then to 1,000 meters, and then to 2,000 meters in 1 week. I mean, from basically from one swim session to the next.
Okay.
So that is another thing, another trick for I think to pay attention to. For me, it was the case that I thought I do breathing here. I know how to breathe. So I did 5 strokes before I was breathing, and that was way too much. And before, when I was younger and I didn't have a clue about breathing and I could only do 20 meters before I was out of breath, I think I was just holding my breath. I was just breathing completely chaotically. I didn't have a rhythm. So the breathing rhythm maybe can help you to find less stress when you swim.
Okay.
The right breathing rhythm for you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I will definitely try it.
Great.
I want to talk about one other topic, and I think afterwards we can come to an end. That it's not going to be a 5-hour podcast.
Right.
Manuel, do you have another topic?
I have a question at hand.
Okay.
So I'm curious. So there's the heart rate variability, right? Which is an indicator for, you could say, for the life quality of a heart, right? So heart rate variability, we know, says more about it's a better predictor for health than pulse itself and than the other measures of heart rate, right? And what is the equivalent for breathing? Is it breath rate variability? Is it can you say something about that? Is there some measurement that you can talk about?
So there are these capnometers on the market where you measure the carbon dioxide in the out breath and combine that by measuring the breathing frequency. Preferably you would also like to measure the breathing volume. I think that would be the closest to come to an equivalent to find what is a good breathing rhythm, a breathing frequency, a good breathing volume that promotes longevity. Another way to just do a simple test is to check your CO2 tolerance, developed by Professor Buteyko, the control pause, which is also called the Bolt score by Patrick and Manuel. That's a simple thing. You just take a normal inhale through the nose, normal exhale, and then after the exhale, make sure your mouth is closed, pinch your nose. If you're sitting down, you're counting the seconds until you feel the urge to inhale. Or if you're standing up, you're walking and counting the steps until you feel the urge to inhale. And the inhale should be through your nose. And the number of seconds or the number of steps, that's the Bolt score or the control pause. And the more, the better, so to say.
We actually did that as a measurement at our last seminar. We measured at the first day and the last day, and then we measured it like 3 weeks or 2 weeks after the seminar. And the last day of the seminar was, most of the people were worse than before, but it was like the whole seminar was a lot of exercise, a lot of movement. So this was like a training camp. So it was too much, but we know it's too much. But afterwards, like 2 weeks after our last seminar, I completely destroyed my best Bolt score. I think I doubled my Bolt score, and I doubled my walking score. Like not doubled my score, but I was way higher. So it took like 2 weeks of recovery, but after that my Bolt score was by far the best Bolt score I ever measured. So, and my Bolt score was way better. Is always way better after I used the carbohyla.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, inhaling extra CO2. So you want to share something about that? Your experience there?
Oh yes.
I've seen some videos you have sent where you do more reps after the carbohyla.
Yes. That's the topic I want to talk about. Yeah. So I have 2 devices. I bought 2 devices from you. The one was the Bodystream system, where and the other one is the carbohyla. And I used the Bodystream system. So for those who don't know the Bodystream system, it's a airtight suit, and you pump it up with CO2, 100% CO2. And I used that during the European Championship with the Austrian handball national team, and the results were amazing. It blew my mind. Normally after a big game, the players have a hard time falling asleep. So because there are 20,000 spectators cheering at you, or or not not cheering for you, but cheering for the other team. And so they were like at 4 or 5 in the morning. They were still like pumped up with adrenaline, and they're like, okay, I can't sleep, but I have a big day tomorrow. So yeah. And then I started to use the Bodystream system, and most of the players just fell asleep after 5 minutes, like this. Immediately they fell asleep, and they become really, really calm, really fast. So, and it helped them to recover faster. So that was really amazing, and I love to use the suit as well when I feel like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, it's stressful today. Then I use the suit, and after like 5 minutes I'm completely calm. And I normally have a hard time to like quiet my brain. It's always running, and I'm thinking of 1,000 things. But when I'm in the Bodystream system, I'm so calm, super fast. And the other device is the Carbohaler, and I tested it. At the beginning I was like, yeah, okay, it doesn't really do much for me. But then you told me, okay, try to do some exercise afterwards. And then, okay, I tried pull-ups with extra weight, and I put on 40 extra kilograms, and then I was not able to do a single pull-up. After then I used the Carbohaler for I think 4 minutes by 4.5% CO2, and afterwards I was able to do one pull-up with 40 kilos extra. And then I tested bend over rowing with I think 60 kilograms or so, and I did 18 reps. And after 4 minutes of I think 4.55% CO2, I did like 25 reps. So that's a huge improvement for like just 4 minutes of breathing a little bit more CO2.
Yeah. It's really interesting, and one study showed actually when the participants were hyperventilating and they measured adrenaline, carbon dioxide, and something more in the blood, I don't remember, but when they were hyperventilating and they noticed that the CO2 levels went down by half in the blood, the adrenaline levels, they went up by 360%. It makes sense. We think of someone hyperventilating, right? The eyes are about to pop out from the head, and they look really stressed when the mouth is wide open. Hyperventilation, it makes sense that the adrenaline levels are high. But the interesting thing is when they did the study again a week later, this time they were hyperventilating the same amount of air per minute, but it was spiked with 5% carbon dioxide. Just like when you use the Carbohaler, you inhale extra carbon dioxide. And this time the CO2 levels were almost unchanged because of the added CO2. And also the adrenaline levels were almost, they were unchanged. They were the same as before. So that tells us when carbon dioxide levels go down, adrenaline levels go up. And when adrenaline levels go up, carbon dioxide levels go down. So when you explain about your players, the handball players in the Austrian handball team, and they were pumped up of adrenaline after a game and they couldn't fall asleep until they went into the CO2 suit and immersed themselves in 100% CO2. That probably helped the body to balance then, increase the CO2 in the body so that the adrenaline could go away and they could fall asleep. 5 minutes, that's crazy compared to falling asleep at 4 or 5 in the morning, right? I can just imagine the level of recovery they get compared to not sleeping.
Yeah, definitely. One player was like, he fell asleep like really immediately, and then I woke him up and it was like, no, I was not asleep. I was like, yeah, you slept for like 1 hour straight. It was like, whoa, really? Yeah.
So and regarding the Carbohaler and your tests there you have done, so in my case I've been able to do more push-ups. I was able to do 49 push-ups before I started with the Carbohaler, and now I can do 75, which is quite an increase. I really tried hard to reach 50, but I just couldn't. And the testimonial I got a few weeks ago was from a guy who is a long distance cyclist. He noticed that, so when he bikes typically for 100 kilometers, when he does that, his ergometer on the bike is 280 after 1 hour of cycling at the heartbeat of 160. Now, since he started using the carbohaler, the watt on his ergometer is 308, so it's 10% more.
That's huge for a good cyclist. It's huge.
Yeah, it is. He said, we buy aerodynamic socks and we shave our legs and we try to do everything we can. We spend thousands of dollars to get 0.1 watt extra. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but for him it was really huge. And another thing he noticed was that normally when he hops on the bike, it's a constant struggle between the mind and the legs for the first half hour, 45 minutes. One part of him just want to quit, questioning, why the heck am I doing this? Can I just stop this bullshit? Until he gets into the zone and he thinks life is wonderful. But that normally takes half an hour, 45 minutes. And now he does a carbohaler session before he starts on the bike. And he says it's almost like I'm almost immediately in the zone. It's such a huge difference. And now I've just tried out of curiosity to skip the carbohaler before I go out for a bike. And I regret it immediately because I'm not fully back to the original, but in that direction. And he also shared that before he started with the carbohaler, he had an injury in his knee, so he didn't bike for 3 weeks. And then when he started again, like for many people, it's an uphill battle. It was tough to get going again. It took quite some time. But then he said, during this period when I had done the carbohaler, I also had a 2-week break when I was away. But the interesting thing is when I started again, it was like I hadn't have any break at all. I was immediately in the same shape. And he also said, which is also interesting, that he has all these meal plans and he does a lot of biking, but still he wasn't able to lose his extra weight. But now, after 8 weeks, he had lost 8 kilos, so 1 kilo per week, just because probably he had changed his metabolism a little bit in his body to open up the door slightly more to the fat reserves and reduce slightly the energy conversion using only sugar because of CO2, and it's promoting, helping the oxygen reach the mitochondria so that potentially the fat can be used more as fuel. Anyway, very, very interesting. And we are just in the beginning of exploring here with the carbohaler. We are almost getting day by day new testimonials. It's really exciting to see where people from all kinds of different challenges are able to improve. Typically we hear more mental clarity, reduced stress and anxiety, and more energy, and better endurance.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to test it on the Ample players. I will test it in November. The next time I'm at the team with the team is in November for the European Championship qualification, and I think we will test it there before the practice and before the game.
Yeah. So it's good now you had some time to get some experience there before, so you know what you're doing, kind of.
Yes, I think we have one last question. So we talked a lot about all the different benefits of breathing. Is there any downside of playing with your breath, or is there a dark side of breathing? Like, can you do too much breathing therapy, too much breathing techniques? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, from this perspective of carbon dioxide, some say that carbon dioxide exposure is toxic, it's dangerous. So if you slow down your breathing too much, maybe you will be loading your system with too much carbon dioxide. But I think that's more a reflection of the level of knowledge that's in there in the medical expertise. I am not super impressed by that level of knowledge. So if we just think about, if we're going through a keyhole surgery in our stomach, the stomach is inflated to give room for the surgical instruments and so that the organs can be shown clearly. So they pump up the stomach to inflate it. And the gas used is carbon dioxide. So imagine the level of the amount of CO2 that is pumped up in the body to do that is a huge amount. And the reason why CO2 is used is because it's considered so safe. Because almost every single cell in our body produces carbon dioxide. So the body knows more than anything, I would say, how to get rid of carbon dioxide if there is too much in the body. Mainly we do it with the out breath. We just start to breathe faster to get rid of extra CO2, but we can also release some of it through the skin. So of course we always have to be careful. Whatever we do, we have to listen to our body. Some of us are better than others at doing that, but that goes for everything new we do. We should always listen to our body. If we have health issues, health challenges, we should consult with a medical profession. What we do in conscious breathing, we don't have any medical advices. We don't give any medical advices. Always consult your physician if you have any questions. Whatever you do when it comes to breathing, you do it at your own risk, whether that is taping your mouth shut at night, whether it's using the relaxator or inhaling a little extra carbon dioxide, or go out for a run with closed mouth. Listen to your body and notice what it tells you.
Yeah, that's an important disclaimer, though, and just being sure that everyone's safe. Also, that like the notion that you brought up again and again was that being curious about it and being sensitive but playful about it. I mean, there's so many more topics popping up in my mind. I feel like for now we should probably round it up, but I would be excited to get back to this topic. I'm thinking about voice. I'm thinking about kids' development and how it's different with them, and I'm thinking about flow states and all those kinds of things. So I feel there's a lot more to open there. I'd be excited to.
Let's see what the future holds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe do a follow-up podcast, or maybe we do something together, a workshop together, or something like that. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So yeah.
Well, great to be on your show, guys.
Thank you
really
very much
glad.
for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure, as always, talking to you. I could talk to you for the next 15 hours. but so yeah, no, really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Manuel. Pleasure to be talking to you.
And I hope
wonderful.
I hope your listeners enjoyed the show, and we'll be back with the next topic. The next topic will be metabolic flexibility. Yeah, we keep you posted about the next podcast, and we hope you enjoyed listening to us three. And yeah, goodbye. Thank you.